Okay, so we're starting our third bend of our unit, and if we look at the standard, we're getting closer and closer to mastering our standard here, which talks about writing an opinion piece and supporting our point of view with reasons and information. Now, we're going to be using text sets because we want to become comfortable with the format of the FSA writing test. Okay? Whether we take it or not this school year, they have not made a decision, but we want to prepare for it because obviously you don't wait until the night before you're going for your driving test to learn how to drive a car, right? You learn how early and you practice for a long time. So it doesn't really matter whether or not we're taking the test this year. What matters is that we learn how to do this. Now, this is the exact same text set that we used as our pre-test, and I'm going to walk you through and teach you some of the ways to approach it. Now, when you are looking at opinion or persuasive essays, your thesis must be something that someone can disagree with. Okay? So when we say everyone has had a special person in their life, okay, nobody can disagree with that, right? But we can disagree with whether or not zoos are harmful or helpful to animals. Okay? So when writing and crafting a persuasive or opinion essay, you have to take a side. You can't be on both sides of the issue. You have to take a side. And you have to make sure, can you put that down, Tristan, so I can see your face? Thank you. You have to make sure that you are being convincing and using strong language, okay? We'll notice this when we start to read that first passage together. But what I want to teach you today is how to approach the text set and get ready to plan an essay. And the first step of that, as you remember, is that we want to go straight to the writing prompt. All right, in your case, I know that we already did this during the pretest, but when we look at the writing prompt first, it gives us an idea of what it is they want us to do. And that's always a good thing to know ahead of time because it gives you a purpose for reading. So if you could look up here at the screen, that would be helpful. Okay, all right. Did you find it? All right, good. Okay, so it says, the passages you read were about zoos. Write an essay in which you give your opinion on whether zoos are helpful to animals or harmful to animals. Use information from the sources in your essay. So there are really just two possible thesis statements. Can somebody give me an example of one of them? Emma? Zoos are harmful to animals. What's the other one, Sean? Zoos are helpful to animals. Okay? So in a way, it's a little bit easier when using a text set to come up with a thesis, an opinion thesis statement. Okay? So when we get to the point where we're going to plan, you already know which two opinions they're asking you for, whether you think they're helpful or harmful. Now, this text set has three different sources, three different articles presenting information on both sides of the issue. You're just going to have to decide which side you're on. And let me tell you a tip that I always give my students. Choose the side that has the most evidence. Nobody knows what your opinion is. Essay police are not going to show up at the door and knock on the door and say, I know that Aiden does not believe that zoos are harmful. We're going to take him in, okay? They won't do that. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So you should be able to argue either side, but I always say argue the side that has the most information that you can use. Can you turn and face the front for me, please? Okay, so the next step, now that we've read the prompt and we kind of have an idea of what the two sides are, we're going to go back now, and now we're going to start to read. We know that we're looking for information that talks about helpful or harmful to animals, right? We want to pay attention to that. And what we're going to do is something that's called annotating the text. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of that word before, annotating the text. Okay, so a couple of you have heard it before. Do either one of you remember what it means? No, okay. Well, I'm glad because I can teach you something. Annotating the text is when you jot down a word or two in the white space. And when I talk about the white space, I'm talking about the margins. All this area over here that there's no writing. Okay? You jot down a word or a phrase as you're reading. And I kind of like to think about it as you're leaving yourself breadcrumbs. You're leaving yourself a marking to find your way back in the text. So say, for example, you get all the way to the end and you say, where are the sections that talked about that mental illness? All you have to do is look at the breadcrumbs you've left yourself, and you can go right back to those parts. You don't have to go back and reread the whole article. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's read this. Source 1, zoochosis. It was the sadness in their eyes that has continued to haunt us. Notice the words that they're using. Remember, persuasive, trying to persuade somebody to think in a certain way, feel emotion about a certain topic. Keep animals in zoos? We don't think so. There is documented research that many animals removed from their natural habitat and kept in captivity have developed a kind of mental illness known as zoochosis. So I'm going to write over here, mental illness. That's all I'm writing, mental illness. So if I want to find information about a mental illness, I know I can go back here. And then if it is spoken about in any other place, I can write about it. Galila? Yes, I'm going to model for you for a little bit of this passage, and then I'm going to send you off to annotate on your own. So you're going to read through it, and you're going to annotate on your own after I show you a couple of parts of it, okay? All right, so let's read on. Animals with this disease often pace back and forth, twist their necks, bob their heads up and down, turn in never-ending circles, and even tear holes in their own skin. Can you imagine being so miserable that you want to inflict harm on yourself? Notice again the language here, right? Miserable, inflict harm, okay? In this paragraph, they're still talking about the mental illness, but they're describing the behavior of it. What does it look like? So it's a description of what that mental illness looks like. Once, when we visited a zoo, we noticed that some of the animals kept in cages were grabbing onto the bars and shaking them. If you could have looked into these animals' eyes like we did, you would have seen deep sadness. It is this sadness that continues to haunt us to this day. Again, that word haunt and sad. Okay, so I'm just going to write sadness next to this paragraph. It has been documented that Junior, a killer whale, was removed from his natural habitat in Iceland and placed in a tank in Niagara Falls. He died 4 years later, deprived of outside air, sunlight, and companionship. So here is a killer whale who died. So that, to me, seems like a really good detail that could support a main idea about the fact that the enclosures in zoos are not appropriate for animals. So right now I'm stopping at the end of each paragraph, but obviously we know from reading and learning in the earlier bends that not all of the information is noteworthy, right? We know that we want to use the text structure to help us determine what is important here, okay? So you're going to continue to read through these sources. There are 3 of them. and you are going to annotate the text like I have been doing. Now be careful, guys, because what happens is we get so into the reading, we get so caught up in the reading of the text, we forget to jot. So at different times, stop yourself. What am I learning here? What can I jot down that will help me to remind me of what I learned here? And notice what I've jotted. I have not jotted down full sentences, correct? I have not. I have only jotted down a couple of words here and there. But it's going to help me to remember where to go back. Any questions before you start working? Okay, go ahead and start reading and annotating the text.